Congratulations to this community on 30 years of Earth observations. It's very exciting to be here and to see you all. Many months ago, as our team began planning for this celebration, this meeting, I spent some time reading up on GLOBE's history, and I was interested to learn more about GLOBE community members who have made a particular impact on our knowledge of Earth science, Earth systems, and to know about past connections to science professionals. One thing I learned was that in 1997, GLOBE teacher and coordinator John Zavalny organized a training with the Jane Goodall Institute for Peace Corps volunteers in Tanzania. And later, in 2014, the Jane Goodall Institute participated in the Africa Regional Meeting. It was no surprise to me that GLOBE has a historical connection with the Jane Goodall Institute. We have a shared understanding of the power of observation to expand our knowledge of the Earth and to change communities. And so today we are thrilled, and I am honored to introduce you to Mary Ford, who is the Vice President of Roots and Shoots, a program of the Jane Goodall Institute. Mary's career has focused on engaging youth in environmental sciences. She's managed programs with the World Wildlife Fund and the National Audubon Society. And today she'll share a video greeting from Dr. Jane Goodall and from Lilian Pintea. And across the three of them, we'll learn more about their inspiring work and how they're engaging learners in ways that impact communities by expanding their own knowledge of the Earth and Earth systems. But I'm very excited and deeply honored to welcome Mary Ford. And Mary, I can hand it over to you.
Hello, I'm so happy to be with everyone today. Today, first of all, a good thing to know is that it's a great day to be celebrating and learning from Jane Goodall herself, because today is World Chimpanzee Day. So today is the anniversary of the day that Jane first arrived in Tanzania and began studying chimpanzees. That was in 1960. So we're celebrating 65 years of Jane's work in Tanzania, which is still ongoing. And Jane, in fact, is in Tanzania right now, which is why she can't be on video with us. But with that, I think that we will cue up the video greeting from Jane herself and from my colleague, Dr. Lilian Pintea. Lilian is our Vice President for Conservation Science, and Lilian does a lot of work using citizen science and satellite imagery, which he will share in his recording as well.
Hello, this is Jane Goodall. I'm sending this message to congratulate you, the GLOBE community, on your 30 years of impressive successes. It's really wonderful to know that so many of you are gathering this week from 86 countries across the world. Ever since I learned about GLOBE, I've been impressed and inspired by your enthusiasm and commitment to science and learning. I know that for 30 years, GLOBE has been collecting and analyzing Earth science data, and this is helping us to understand more about our planet. It educates communities, young and old alike, as well as influencing policies around the world. I think all children are born with an innate curiosity, a desire to learn about the world around them. From a very early age, I was fascinated by animals, and I was lucky that I had a really supportive mother. She told me that from the start, I had the making of a little scientist. I was only 1.5, she tells me, when she came to say goodnight and found I'd taken a lot of earthworms, and the earth as well, into my bed. Instead of reprimanding me for messing up my bed, she helped me to relocate them into the garden, saying they would die if I didn't take them back. Much later, she told me she was absolutely sure that I was wondering, how could they move without legs? She said I was watching them so intently. You know, I believe it's really important for a child to have supportive parents, or at least some supporting adults. If my mother had got angry about my fascination for worms and other creatures, I might not have gone on to follow my passion to go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. No thought of being a scientist back then, 80 years ago. And as most of you know, this led me spending years studying chimpanzees in Tanzania and then working to protect their forest habitat. I hadn't even been to college when I began in 1960, and although I eventually got a PhD, despite never going to do undergraduate work, I still feel more of a naturalist than a scientist. When we began to train local Tanzanian field staff to follow and observe chimpanzees, their curiosity about the individual chimpanzees, their personalities, their behavior, ensured that the information they recorded was pretty accurate. And when they were provided with GIS and GPS technology to map the chimps' range and travel routes, their data collection was even more impressive. Subsequently, as we moved from only studying chimp behavior to protecting the habitats of chimpanzees outside the national park, I realized that the villagers were cutting down the trees in their village forest reserves simply to survive, to make money from charcoal or timber, or space to grow more food. Clearly, I thought, it was desperately important they found ways of making a living without destroying their environment. So began Tacare, JGI's method of true community-led conservation. Next, individuals from villages with forest reserves, and these are plentiful along the coast of Lake Tanganyika. Individuals were selected to become forest monitors. They learned to use mobile phones to monitor the health of their forests, noting illegal activities and the presence or absence of different animal species. In other words, they became citizen scientists. They're passionate about this work, and because of this, it's led to the protection and sometimes restoration of their village forest reserves. One of the most important programs of JGI is Roots and Shoots. This is for young people of all ages, now in 75 countries and growing. These young people are, among other things, encouraged to observe the conditions in their own communities and use this information to choose projects that will benefit the people, the animals, and the environment there. Well, I'm sure you're now curious to know more about these programs. So let me introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Lilian Pintea, who will tell you more about our work with Tacare, our community-led approach, and citizen science, and Mary Ford, who will tell you more about our Roots and Shoots youth program. But before I end, let me thank the Globe community once again for making such a difference in so many communities in your own countries. And I wish you another 30 years of continued success. Thank you. Goodbye from me. Over to you, Lilian.
Thank you, Jane. My name is Lilian Pintea. I'm the Vice President of Conservation Science for the Jane Goodall Institute, USA. And I'd like to share with you in the next few minutes how Tacare, our community-led conservation approach, is helping us convert data, including data generated by the citizen science, into conservation action and impact. When Jane had a chance to fly on a small plane over Gombe in the early 90s, she realized that Gombe, you could see it on the left, on this visualization from Maxar satellite imagery, became an island, a forest island surrounded by human settlements, deforestation, and farms. She also realized that unless we could help people find ways of making a living without destroying the environment, we could not protect chimpanzees or their habitats or anything else. So this is how the idea of Tacare started. So what is Tacare? Tacare is our holistic model that focuses on local communities owning and driving their decisions to improve the lives of people, animals, and the shared environment. It includes 5 stages in the process. It begins with proper engagement, active listening, joint understanding, combining traditional knowledge and the latest science and data and technologies, developing a common understanding of the problem and solutions, then facilitating implementing these solutions, and when the project is finished, stepping back, or if the communities are not ready, stepping back until the decision is done to move forward. The entire process is grounded in maps, and geospatial data and technologies are used at every stage of the process to integrate local and scientific knowledge to drive and inform this decision-making process. So when I had a chance to join the Tacare team in 2000, we immediately looked at the legendary Lancet program to go back in time and see what's happening to habitats outside Gombe between 1972 and 1999. What we realized is that more than 60% of the chimpanzee habitat outside the park has been lost. We also brought the satellite imagery to the local communities and asked them to share with us their knowledge of resources and how these resources change over time. The community mapping, which the Jane Goodall Institute is applying as part of the Tacare process, leverages high-resolution satellite imagery, such as this one's from Maxar and Planet, and it also uses mobile apps such as Survey 123 in order to be able to record local people's observations and knowledge. This enables to also involve all members of the communities and record their knowledge from youth to elders. We can also record audio and video to attach to these maps. At the end of the day, all of this data is brought together to inform a common understanding and make decisions, for example, like developing an interconnected network of village land forest reserves. The next stage in terms of facilitation also involves citizen science. You can see here our village forest monitor using Survey 123 to patrol and monitor her forest land, and then share the data with the other decision makers at the district level or regional level through dashboards like this one, which you can see on the right, using ArcGIS online technologies. And all this effort now, looking back at satellite imagery from 2005, pays off. You can see deforested lands, you can see landslides, signs of erosion along the streams. And now the same Maxar satellite imagery can show trees coming back, woodlands restoring. And if we now fly over some of these watersheds outside in some of the village land forest reserves outside Gombe, you could see how the trees are coming back. And with trees coming back, you can find people using mushrooms, you can see wildlife moving back. So all of that is supporting people, animals, and the environment to have a healthier existence. We have now the evidence that regeneration of the Nyombo woodlands, as you could see here on this image, actually is connected with the increase in village forest monitoring by the local communities, and there is a direct correlation with decrease in fire and improvement in forest regeneration and conservation. So if you want to learn more about how Tacare is enabling local communities and conservation practitioners to work together and leverage science and technologies to support actions on the ground and improve the lives for people, animals, and environment, have a look at our Tacare story map on the left, or you can read more stories in the book, in our Tacare book. Thank you so much. And now my colleague, Mary Ford, will talk to you more about Roots and Shoots program. Thank you.
So thank you so much for your kind comments in the chat, everyone, for what you appreciated about Jane's greeting and Lilian's research. Lilian is also on his way to meetings in Europe with the space agency and working on this satellite imagery focus that we have. So that's why he can't be here today. But I'm so happy to represent our organization, the Jane Goodall Institute, today. As Jane mentioned, I oversee the Roots and Shoots youth program, which I'll tell you more about now. I work specifically in the US, but we have programs, Roots and Shoots chapters in 75 countries. And I'll share more information about how you can find chapters in your own countries. But also, I'll encourage you that even if there isn't an existing office or existing program for Roots and Shoots in your country, you're very, very welcome to start something, and our global office can help support your work getting started. And there are wonderful intersections between Globe and Roots and Shoots. So I encourage us to all think creatively about how we can work together. And I know Jackie mentioned John Zavalny as a teacher who many decades ago worked to bring Roots and Shoots and Globe together in the US. And I'm happy to report that we still work closely with John Zavalny. So he is a great advocate for Globe within our network. We work very closely with him in Los Angeles. He's now a retired teacher, but still very involved with Roots and Shoots and a great cheerleader for Globe. Yes, I see in the chat, some people know John. We love him. And I also just wanted to say that it's fun for me to be here with John McLaughlin. John and I have many years ago worked on establishing in the early days of the Citizen Science Association, now called the Association for Advancing Participatory Sciences. And I wanted to point that out just to show that there are so many great intersections between the work we do in Roots and Shoots and citizen science and the work in Globe. In fact, as an educator, I worked with Globe for many years. I've met with Globe educators from all over the world. And so Globe is close to my heart. And so it's a special honor for me to be here today. Even though I'm representing a different organization, I also feel like part of the Globe community, having used the materials for many, many years. So let's see, let's go to the next slide, please. I'll tell you more about Roots and Shoots. This is our official mission to foster respect and compassion for all living things, to promote understanding of all cultures and beliefs, and to inspire each individual to take action to make the world a better place for people, animals, and the environment. And I highlighted some of the words here in yellow because I think those words especially underscore the connections between the mission and work of Globe and Roots and Shoots. All about youth empowerment. Globe is all about youth empowerment and citizen science. And you can see that's sort of the focus of Roots and Shoots as well. So we really are sister organizations. Next. Next slide, please. Yeah, I did want to just, oh no, sorry, go back one. I want to make sure Jane, you see Jane's presence in this presentation as well, because the idea of Roots and Shoots is really rooted in this philosophy that Jane has, which is at the core of all of her work. You can see it reflected in Tacare and in Roots and Shoots. So this idea is that every individual matters, every individual has a role to play, and every individual makes a difference. So every single person can make a difference, which I see is a big part of Globe as well, that everyone can contribute to the way we understand our world. Next slide. So this is the real basis of what we do in Roots and Shoots. We support and we connect and we celebrate young people from all the way from age 5 to 25 and even beyond. Like Jane likes to say that Roots and Shoots is for the young and the young at heart. So we do have adults and senior citizens who participate as well, but mostly it's designed to support young people who do projects to help people, other animals, and our shared environment. And I wanted to highlight those last few words in that statement there because Jane's vision is very holistic and interconnected. So she doesn't want Roots and Shoots to be seen as just an environmental education program. The idea is that we need to help everyone and everything and every living thing and everything that all creatures depend on in order to make the world better. So that means that our participants do projects to help people, like working in shelters where people sleep when they're unhoused, and tutoring in schools. They also help domestic wildlife and livestock, and they help the environment. So this very holistic vision. Next slide. Oh, I'm enjoying some of the pictures and notes in the chat of encounters with Jane. She still travels over 300 days a year. She's 91 years old. Last year in 2024, she was on the road 325 days and visited 27 countries. So if she can keep going, we can, no matter what challenges we face. This slide I wanted to show because it explains the name Roots and Shoots. Now, sometimes people hear that name and think the program is about plants or about gardening, but truly Roots and Shoots is a metaphor. And Jane explains it this way, that roots creep underground everywhere and make a very firm foundation. Shoots seem very weak, but to reach the light, they can break open brick walls. So hundreds and thousands of roots and shoots, hundreds and thousands of young people around the world can break through these walls. Next. Okay, so we can just click through these bullets here. I included this slide to show what we actually do in what my team, my staff, and in our office, what we actually do to help support young people taking action. We provide free resources and tools, which I'll tell you more about, technical and some financial support to young people and their groups that are doing projects, facilitate outreach and training, convene communities of change makers like this one here. We bring people together. We celebrate and amplify stories of impact. We provide mentorship and partnership opportunities. And most importantly, we build hope. Next. So ours now, I'm going to dig into a little bit more about what Roots and Shoots is all about and how it came to be. So next slide. This is a wonderful photo of the actual day that Roots and Shoots began. This was in 1991. So I like that Globe and Roots and Shoots have a similar age. We started in the early 90s as well. And it started actually when Jane was giving a series of lectures around Tanzania in schools. And a lot of kids were excited about her work and were gaining hope from hearing from her. But some of them were starting to feel really worried about the state of the world and the state of their country and their communities. So they came to Jane's house in Dar es Salaam, and Jane's very welcoming. She welcomes many people to her house. So they gathered on her porch, which you see here, and they told her that they were so worried about all the problems that they saw. They didn't know what to do. And they were asking her what to do or whether she could do something. And instead of telling them what to do or telling them that she would try to solve the problems, she said, you know much more about your communities and the problems in your communities. You know more than I do. So why don't you gather together more friends, take some time to observe your communities and understand what the real needs and opportunities and resources are, and then together work to actually try to solve those problems. And they did. And that's how the first Roots and Shoots group was formed. And it's grown ever since then to 75 countries now. So next slide. This is how Jane will describe why she started Roots and Shoots. After that first group, she decided this idea really needed to grow. And she says, I met so many young people who had lost hope. Some were depressed, some were apathetic. This is my effort to bring back the hope that we must have if we are to change direction. Next. So as you can tell from that story, that Jane encourages young people to use their own voices and their own ideas to address the things that matter most to them. So they do this by planning and implementing service projects in their own communities. So the important thing here is just to know that it's all about young people choosing themselves what kinds of actions their communities need and how they can make a difference. Next. So it's all about turning action into hope. Even when you're feeling hopeless, if you take action, you can grow hope and then turn hope back into more action. Next. Now, I'm going to show you a few specific resources, and I want to highlight that you can find all of these things on rootsandshoots.org, and everything on there is free. You are welcome to use it, adapt it, translate it. You don't even have to ask. It's available to everyone. And I will, after this presentation, I'll also put one more link in the chat, which is to our global site, which should help connect you to my counterparts in other countries. Next. Now, to give some structure to young people who are trying to create projects and make a difference in their communities, we help them use this 4-step formula. It's very simple. It's all about step 1, getting engaged. Step 2, observe. This is where there's a great intersection with Globe. Observing your community, figuring out what it needs. Step 3 is taking action, and step 4 is celebrating. Next. Here's just some examples of things you can download from the website. We have downloadable toolkits for educators and for families. Next. We have an online course that's free for anyone. It takes about 6 weeks typically to work through it, but it's asynchronous. You can start it at any time. Next. We have stories of what Roots and Shoots looks like in communities and how communities and young people have benefited. Next. We have people have uploaded their Roots and Shoots projects, so you can see all the different things that they've done. Next. We have a project planning guide and a lot of related resources to help people get started. Next. I wanted to share a couple of examples here quickly of what projects look like. So this is a school in California. The kids in the Roots and Shoots group there decided that they wanted to raise food because they had a little bit of land. So they planted a garden, but then they also did an exercise where they used Survey 123 and mapped their community, just like the community mapping that Lilian talked about in Africa. Here they mapped their community and realized that there were a number of shelters nearby that were helping to feed people who were hungry and had no homes. And those shelters didn't have easy access to fresh vegetables. So now the school grows food for those shelters. Next. I wanted to show one more example of mapping, and it doesn't have to be fancy. This is just a map on paper, but this shows a Roots and Shoots group that mapped the illegal dumping sites where there were a lot of trash in their community. And then they made an exhibit about this, highlighting what was happening. And they did a photography exhibit showing people how this was affecting the community. And then they made sculptures out of trash. So they brought a lot of awareness and really reduced the amount of illegal dumping. Next. Here, I wanted to show this slide quickly. You don't need to absorb all of this. You'll have access to all these slides later, but these are what we call compassionate traits. We have identified, working with our young people who are involved, we've identified 9 compassionate traits, and these are characteristics that we see grow in young people when they participate in Roots and Shoots. And so we think the biggest impact of being involved in a program like this or in Globe is just how it impacts people on the inside in addition to the value of creating scientific data or making a difference in the community, that growing compassion within yourself, that's probably the greatest impact of this kind of participation. So some of the traits we see grow are thinking critically, being empathetic, being introspective, acting with purpose, being hopeful, etc. Next. This slide is just highlighting that we do have lesson plans on other similar resources that anyone can use, again, for educators inside the classroom or outside the classroom. Next. Here's a map showing the 75 countries where Roots and Shoots is active. There's obviously a lot of overlap with Globe. And again, I just want to encourage, if you want to explore Roots and Shoots, using it in your country, you can either collaborate with folks who are already doing it, or you're welcome to use our resources to help start doing Roots and Shoots in your countries as well. And we love to partner, so you can definitely do Roots and Shoots and Globe at the same time. Here are our social media handles, so you can follow us at Roots and Shoots and Jane Goodall Institute. The website, again, is there, and my email, which I'll also put in the chat, so you can reach out if you have questions later. And last slide, I'll give Jane the last word here. The final slide is the statement that Jane likes to make, that we have the choice to use the gift of our lives to make the world a better place. And I really think people who are doing Globe have embraced this idea and are truly making the world a better place. And with that, I'm happy to take questions if there are any questions. And I'll also drop a few more resources in the chat here.
Mary, thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor to have you and to hear from Jane and from Lilian. So thank you so much. We do have a question in the Q&A, and reminder to all, if you have questions for Mary, please add them to the Q&A, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen, the 3 dots next to the more. If you click on that, you'll see Q&A. Our first question comes from Ilyas in Benin. He says, congratulations on your presentation. There are many similarities between Globe and Roots and Shoots. We're both investing in the future. Question, please, are you present in West Africa?
Yeah, there are some programs in West Africa. And actually what I'm going to do right now is drop a link that has a map from our global site. And here's where you can find programs that are active and links to where there are contacts in different parts of the world. And if you're not seeing a contact in your country where you're working or want to work, there is a way on that website to reach out to our global coordinators. We have several people who help to connect each other, to connect everyone around the world. So reach out to the global coordinators and they'll connect you to someone in the region who can mentor you or support your work.
Thanks, Mary. And a related question, if you happen to know, are you available in Nepal?
Oh my goodness, actually, that is I have a fun answer because we're very active in Nepal. I have a wonderful counterpart in Nepal named Shrishti, and the office there does incredible work. So that's a great place to get involved.
Thanks, Mary. And just a comment from one of our partners in the US. Love to hear about Kenya and or near Lake Victoria.
Well, so interesting, actually, we don't have a program active in Kenya right now, which is not really because of anything, because of lack of interest, but because there are a lot of other nonprofits and organizations active in Kenya right now. But I think there's a great opportunity to grow the program there. And we have a lot of people in nearby countries who would be happy to help support and mentor that. So again, reach out to the coordinator. I'll put the coordinator's direct contact information in the chat when we finish speaking. So you can reach out to our coordinator. Rita Grunwald is in South Africa and does a really great job of connecting people to resources in their region.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Another question, you had mentioned all the compassionate traits, which was really interesting. Can you say anything about how you measure or document participant growth in those treats?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Thank you. So we have on our website right now, we have a rubric that you can use for self-assessment or assessment of a group, where people are asked to reflect on their growth in each of those traits. And then also when we are asking our group leaders to report in on their projects and their progress, we ask them to reflect on growth in those traits in the group members. So like if a teacher sees growth in those, each specific trait in their youth members. And then when we are able to obtain funding, we do more in-depth evaluation and research. So we have had funding in the last couple of years to work with the University of Mississippi and really dig into and use real scientific protocols to study growth in those traits in Roots and Shoots participants in Tanzania, Uganda, the Republic of Congo, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we literally just wrapped up that research in June, and we'll soon be sharing more information about the results. So stay tuned. We'll be starting to share that in conferences and presentations and webinars. And if you sign up, there's a place to sign up on our website for an e-newsletter and e-information. And if you sign up for that, you'll get to hear as we release some results of that official research.
Thanks for that, Mary. That's really interesting to hear about. I'm very excited to hear about that. So the next question is, can you say a little bit about how we can encourage youth to have an interest in this kind of work and this kind of studies?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I just really love about Roots and Shoots and is also I think what Jane really loves about it, why she's so passionate about it, is that it's all about finding what young people themselves care about and then supporting that instead of telling them what to do, what kind of issues to care about. So we really love how we see when youth are given the opportunity and the power to choose where their interests align with the needs of the community, we see a lot of deep engagement. So that we see projects in all kinds of different projects. For instance, there's a project where some young people who have Japanese ancestry learned to play traditional Japanese instruments. And now they've been taking those instruments and playing in senior citizen homes to help senior citizens feel better or have some positive experiences. And that just really grew out of the interest of the young people combined with the need that they saw in the senior citizen homes. And I think that's the key to Roots and Shoots and to many other successful programs, is really finding the interests and talents of the individual young people and letting them shine, finding ways to bring those talents and interests into the world.
Great. Our next question comes from somebody in Egypt wondering about any active programs in Egypt. And they ask, what are the conditions to join as an individual expert working in space education?
Oh, that's so interesting. I actually don't think we have an active program in Egypt, but I'm not totally sure. So again, I'll encourage you to reach out to our global coordinator, and I'll put her email in the chat soon, so you'll be able to do that. And there's no reason you can't get started, even if there is no program there now. And I love the idea of the connection between space education and Roots and Shoots, because again, just caring about the thing about Roots and Shoots is that it embraces all interests, all passions, all solutions. And as we've heard about today, and I'm sure you'll hear about more in this meeting, there are great connections between space technology and solving problems here on Earth. So I think there's wonderful opportunity for some creative work there.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. The next question is, do you see any future challenges for Roots and Shoots, and what steps are you taking now to offset those challenges?
Well, I'm sure that so many of you are familiar that always funding is the challenge. We're very, very committed to offering our resources for free. It's very important to us that there are no barriers to participate in Roots and Shoots. So it just means that we have to do a lot of work around fundraising and telling our story and why it's worth funding. So I know you are all dealing with that as well. And I just want to send my love and support to everyone because it is hard, hard work. But that's what I'm personally committed to. That's a lot of my job, is to raise money. And I used to be kind of shy about that. Like, I don't like asking for money. But I think when you really feel strongly about your program and the value it has, it becomes kind of joyful to tell that story and to bring other people into the family and feel like they can support this kind of work and support our young people. So I think just always fundraising is going to be a challenge, but also an opportunity to engage even more people. So I I send my support to everyone who's on that journey as well.
Thanks for that, Mary. That's really important reminder for all that about fundraising. So thank you. Um, we have two more questions in the chat here. I think we have time to address both of them. Actually, three. A third one just came in. We should have time for all three. The first one is, what is something you have learned recently that you wish you knew sooner?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, there's so many things, but okay, I'll talk. This is going to sound boring, but I think it's very important. Is just the deep value of a good, strong budget for your program if you're running a program. And I don't mean like having a lot of money, that's good too, of course, but I mean is like having documentation of your budget and how you're going to spend the money that you do have. And it seems like it's a little bit just about that it's mostly about math, which is, I actually love math, so that part is fun, but it can be really challenging too, just sorting out, working through the accounting. But the budget is where you really get to articulate your values and your priorities, what matters most to your program. So I really encourage like having a lot of, or I've learned to spend a lot of time on the budget, thinking hard about exactly how much money you're going to spend and where and when and why, and whether those expenses truly reflect your mission. So deep focus on budgeting is something I've learned pretty recently.
Yeah, another great reminder there, Mary. So thank you. Our next question is around working with visually impaired students, and the participant says that they do that within the GLOBE program, and just wondering if you have any resources for visually impaired students.
Yeah, if we don't have a lot, but I encourage you to look on our website, and there are some for sure. But I will say that's an area of identified growth for us. And that actually ties back to my point about the budget, like setting aside money for making resources more accessible. Like I mentioned earlier, eliminating barriers to participation is a strong value and priority for us. So one way to do that is to make everything free, but another way to do that is making everything accessible to people with all kinds of disabilities. So that's something that we're actively working on, and you'll see growth in that over time. But I encourage you to explore what we do have available. There are some things, and also some things for people who have hearing deficiencies or are deaf. I did see another question in the chat that's kind of related, which is around languages. And I have a couple answers to that. One is that on our website, rootsandshoots.org, which we developed in the United States, you'll find some resources in Spanish, and we are committed to adding many more resources in Spanish, as we have a lot of Spanish speaking children in the US, and we are very excited to welcome and honor their participation and their language. But and we're also collaborating with our colleagues in Latin America to bring in some Spanish language resources. And I'll also say, like, as you explore the global website and connect to other Roots and Shoots chapters in other countries, there are many things available in languages that are the languages of those countries. So you're also welcome to tap into languages in other countries. And finally, I'll just say that, again, I'll emphasize something I said earlier, which is that you are very, very welcome to take anything that's in English or any other language and translate it yourself, and you don't have to ask permission.
That is really good to know, Mary. So it sounds like many of the resources that participants are thinking about can be available on your website or by contact, and people can find out about Roots and Shoots in their own country by contacting the global coordinator. Is that correct?
That's right. And I just dropped in the chat again, and we'll make sure everyone has easy access to that. There's 2 websites I've mentioned. Rootsandshoots.org is where you'll find a lot of the resources I've mentioned. Those are things we developed in the United States, and they're primarily in English. There's also the global website, and that's more of a website that helps connect people to different programs in different parts of the world. So if you're looking for connections in your country or your region, that's the place to start. But then feel free to draw any resources from either of those sites.
So we have time, I think, for one more question, then we'll take a quick break. But I'm wondering if you can, just a good note to end on, if you can say a little bit about how you're thinking about connections between Roots and Shoots and the GLOBE program. How might we think about connecting? How might we incorporate Roots and Shoots into GLOBE, or vice versa? What can we do together moving forward?
Sure. Well, so one thing that I think is obvious to me, I mentioned briefly this 4-step formula that we use to help young people move through the process of doing a Roots and Shoots community service project. And the second step, I think, is a very important step that's easy to skip over sometimes. And that is step number 2 is observe your community. And that's because we really encourage participants to understand the needs of their community rather than just jumping in and doing a project without seeing what else is happening and what the needs are. So we love to incorporate all kinds of different ways of better understanding your community and what's happening there. And I think GLOBE is a great way to do that, to understand your community, to understand the environmental parameters of your community, some concerns or other aspects of the environment, the environment and nature of your community. So that's one place I think we could do a lot of great collaboration around. But also participation in GLOBE and citizen science more broadly is an action in and of itself. So I'm glad to actually have the opportunity to emphasize that. Step 3 in our 4-step formula is take action, and truly, like, collecting data, sharing data with scientists, sharing data with the public, using data to tell a story and involve more people, help more people understand what's happening in the environment around them. That is a very important action. And actually, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we had our annual youth summit where we had about 30 young people from around the country together in person. And I did a presentation about citizen science for that group and how they could use citizen science in their projects. And I talked about GLOBE, and some of them had already done GLOBE when they were students in their classrooms. And they were really excited about the idea that doing GLOBE could be part of the action that they take to make the world a better place. So I think there's a lot more we can do to help facilitate that.
Mary, I just want to thank you once again for being here. It's been an honor to have you. It's been an honor to hear from Jane and from Lilian. Your work is so inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about all of the connections around the world that we can continue to make. So thank you so much, Mary. And for those of you who continue to have questions, take a look at the Roots and Shoots website. You will, I think you will find many resources there that will be helpful for everybody.